last time we talked, you started dishing out just some incredible knowledge, and I was like, dude, we gotta record this. I felt bad. I was like, after talking, I'm like, shoot, I wish you had a recording of that. So I'm like, let's just do that. So for those of you who don't know Laura, introduce yourself.
So I am Laura Brandao, a mortgage industry veteran, have built a couple of companies, sold a couple of companies, and am very, very invested in the mortgage community because I have to tell you, I love it. I love helping people. I love the work we do. I love the impact that we have. I love building generational wealth for the United States. And I believe that the value of home ownership, it's not just the roof over the heads of our family, but it is life-changing. So I had the privilege and honor of serving the mortgage industry.
Dude, that's an amazing way to phrase it, of serving the mortgage industry. And, the fact you said you're a veteran of it, I think that's almost an understatement. So if you could, I almost want to reel back and how did you get started in mortgage and how did you get to where you are? Because where you are is a long way from where you started, and the story is so cool.
Yes, well, absolutely. And I love sharing that story because it's so meaningful. So me and my husband are high school sweethearts. We met when I was in high school, and we literally got engaged on my 19th birthday, and we got married. Well, we had a child. It was a couple weeks away from my 20th birthday. Okay,
wow.
That's the age I was when we had our first son. Well, that wasn't planned. And so we looked at each other and we said, okay, you stay home because we can't afford daycare. He's going to go to work. We're going to make this happen. Well, needless to say, loved all of that. But I am someone of high energy, and I am someone that has to.
I've noticed.
I constantly have to be doing something. So besides the financial impact that, of course, I needed to contribute to the family, I also needed to stimulate my brain and kind of do something. So I thought to myself, what can I do in the evening? And at that time, it was pretty much either get on the phone or go work in a store, in the evening.
That's it.
Okay. Well, I went to interview at a call center. And listen, there's points in your life when you can look back and say, if I went this direction, my life would go this way. And if I went that direction, my life would go another way.
A real inflection point.
Yes.
Yep.
And the day that I interviewed, the woman said to me, Laura, we'd love to have you come and work here. And I have to ask you a question. And the question was, would you rather wait for the phone to ring and be customer service, or would you like to call out to people with different offers that we have? Yep. And in that moment, without even thinking, I said, I want to control my destiny and I want to call out.
In past reflection, do you know why you made that decision? It's always interesting to me.
It was really, I thought it would be very boring waiting for the phone to ring.
Yep.
I thought it would be boring. And I needed fast pace. That is where I thrive. And so in that moment when they put me on the phone, it was for a mortgage company. Now, I grew up in a household where we didn't have a home, meaning we rented. We were renters.
Yep.
No one in my family ever owned a home. I didn't understand mortgage. I didn't understand home ownership. I didn't know anything. But what I realized is one day I wanted to own a home, even though I was a young lady that had no chance of owning a home at that time.
Yeah.
And in that moment, a few months in, I decided I was going to go and speak to the highest level person at that company to see if I could work more hours to save for a house.
Wow.
I went to that vice president at that time, knocked on the door, asked him for more hours, and he pointed me to staying late and running some reports.
Dude, that's so much gumption. I don't mean to interrupt, but that's one, you're a 20-year-old first real job, probably in an industry you have no background in whatsoever, just started, and you go up to the VP to ask for more hours. The second part of that is you did what I love, which is the opposite of what so many people do today. Instead of going and asking for more money, you went and asked, what more can I do? Knowing that, of course, if you're doing more, you're going to get more money. You know what I mean? That is the likely outcome of doing more. But it reverses it, because what boss is going to say no to doing more versus how easy is it to say no to more money? That's, you know what I mean? It's crazy. So what a great mentality to have. I don't know if you put thought behind that when you did it, or if that was just instinct or what, but what a great move.
Zero thought. Like, you're giving me way too much credit. I was just young and naive. And I thought to myself, in my brain, I knew he would think I was asking for more money. So my brain automatically went to, how do I get a yes?
Mm-hmm.
And I essentially gave him an offer that he couldn't say no to.
Of course. Yeah, totally. Yeah. What boss is ever going to say no to you doing more hours, working harder? Of course. Yeah. Great. Fantastic. It's probably the first time he's ever had some young 20-something come up, knock on his door and be like, hey, I'd like to work more hours. I mean, bosses never get that. So I love it. What a great move. Great move.
Yeah. But when I ran those reports, I didn't just run them. I then sat there analyzing the reports and giving them feedback on, for example, Sue's a teacher that works nighttime. You want to move her to an educational program. You don't want her selling motivational tapes. You want to put her on an educational program.
Yep.
And when I did that, I'm aging myself, but I literally copied the notes and I slipped them under the door of every executive of that company.
Wow.
The next day, when I walked in, the VP was waiting for me to ask me why I did that. And my response was, I thought you might want to have the insights of a perspective that you couldn't have because you're not working on the floor in the call center.
Wow. What another bold move. Yeah.
Now, in that moment, I was promoted to take over the entire call center.
No way.
That was the foundation of my entire mortgage career.
Wow. Again, like so many people right there would ask about what the promotion path is or how do I get promoted rather than just doing extra. And again, figuring out if I'm doing extra that beyond what's even asked of me, required of me, mentioned to me, like it's just your own idea that like that stuff will come. And it came extremely quickly in this case, but like it does tend to come in like spurts. Usually people's career trajectory isn't like a nice, even, straight line up and to the right. Usually it comes in like these jaggedy jumps and starts, you know what I mean? By doing more, by volunteering additional insight. I love putting it under the door of every single VP is insane, but it's an awesome insane. It worked. It's fantastic.
And again, my intention was not to get a promotion. My intention was to provide value and insight that might help the company. See, there's a difference. There's a big difference of the why behind it. I never was going to get a benefit for myself. It was always in thinking of how I can help them. And that has been my model my entire career, regardless of where I was.
Isn't that amazing? And it does, I think, bleed through. I think people can sometimes tell if you're doing something to be helpful, but it's really to help yourself and you just want accolades versus you actually just intrinsically wanting to help, you know what I mean? And move someone else's business forward 100%. That's great. Okay. So I put you in charge of a call center. Again, you're super young, first time ever in the mortgage industry. Now you're in charge of the call center. Where do you go from there? How do you run this thing?
Yeah. And the biggest thing came down to education. Now, you have to remember, there's a lot of terminology in the mortgage business. We're speaking DTIs and LTVs and escrows and all these words that no one even knows what they mean, right?
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, I don't want just people calling saying, hey, Mr. Smith, what rate are you paying? You know, maybe I can get you a lower rate. I wanted educated counselors that knew enough information of the basics of a mortgage transaction to actually ask good questions and be able to receive it. So my first thing I did is I brought in a mortgage expert, and it's so funny. I'm still friends with that person now. All these years later. Yes, it's really funny, but
that's amazing.
We're still connected. Wow. That person that was a mortgage expert at that time, he's maybe 10 years older than me. So at that time, he was like in his 30s. And so he came in and he taught me and my leaders about the mortgage industry. And so we taught the call center people. And what wound up happening is every mortgage company in the entire area, the tri-state area, they all came to this one marketing company because we weren't just calling people. We were actually educated on mortgage and nobody else was offering that.
Dude, that's amazing. And the other cool thing about that, everyone who's operating a call center, I hope you're paying attention to this because like That is, if you can call somebody and rather than trying to extract value from them with your sales pitch, try and give value to them by educating them, they will pick up your call every time. They might not buy from you every time, but they'll pick up your call. And that's the first step to them ever buying anything from you ever. So like I tell my guys the same thing. Look, if we can be helpful on the call and teach them something they don't know before they started the call, they're going to take your next call. Like, and that's the name of the game. You know what I mean? Like you want people to be willing to, that's fantastic. Where'd you get the idea? Was this just another spurt of the, just amazing, fantastic?
I just thought to myself, that was someone that didn't have a mortgage and didn't have expertise in it. What did I need to be really great on the phone? And I thought to myself, that helped me. Why wouldn't I multiply that and help everyone in the call center?
Totally. Again, another cool way to think about it. Like a lot of people are like zero-sum game. I want to get educated so they can beat out these other people next to me and I can do better. But again, it's like, that's such a short-term thinking, kind of small, as opposed to like, I want to elevate this whole group so that we can all do better. And you can imagine the kind of returns you get on that, both from the people around you who are grateful to you for having educated them and lifted them up, from managers, VPs, everyone who sees you do that with a massive group and decides you're the kind of leader we want. That's amazing.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so you now, tri-state area, you are the most educated callers you have talking to people about mortgages. People are actually answering your calls, which is fantastic. First step of the game. Where do you go from there?
So I did that for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I had another child, right? So now I have two little ones. And it was time now. They were going, school was coming, right? So I didn't want to necessarily work evenings, 5 days a week and on the weekends, right? Because now my life was changing. So I'm 100%. Thinking, well, okay, I've got all this mortgage knowledge. Now, why not go work directly for a mortgage company?
Yeah.
So now here I am, in maybe I'm 26, 27 years old. I go and I get hired to start an internal call center for a mortgage company. Okay. I took my experience for a big call center, moved it into the mortgage world. Okay.
Yep.
So I'll never forget. I mean, this is, it's so funny for me to even share these stories because I don't even know where this came from, but I walked through the door and there was a girl that was hiring for a receptionist, right?
Yeah.
So she had all these applicants for a receptionist. And she's like, Laura, I know you're hiring for a call center, but I've got all these people that applied to be receptionists. I just went down the list. And I hired like 25 people that I converted from wanting to be a receptionist to be a call center rep. Okay. So I get them to come in and I train them just like I did at the marketing company, right?
Yeah.
Now listen. So what happens? I've got leads piling up, like meaning they did amazing. I've got leads going up the wall. Okay. But now problem happens. The operations in the mortgage company can't keep up because we have so much business, they can't get it through the pipeline. So I go to the CEO and I say, listen, we've got a dilemma here because we've got a lot of sales and they're not pushing them through.
Yeah.
So I said, question, can I learn how to process, underwrite, set up warehouse lines, learn how to close the loans so that I can solve this problem? He says, go for it.
Yeah,
and
right. He's going to say no.
I was promoted to chief operations officer 3 months after.
Wow. What chutzpah. I love it. This is great. This is another example of like, what I love. I'll take a step back to the receptionist. Do you think you ever could have convinced 20 to 25 different girls to apply if you hadn't yourself broken in at such a young age with no background experience? Do you think that was a key? How did you convince them to take that job? This is a totally different role.
The key. I think that was the key because number one, they trusted me. And I remember young mom, no experience, got on the phone and elevated myself. So I was able to get on the phone and say, guys, I know you weren't applying to be part of the call center, but trust me that I'm going to teach you. I'm going to be right there next to you. I'll take the phone over if you need help. I'll be there hand in hand and let's do this. And people were like, I've never had someone speak to me that way. I've never had someone say, I'm going to be right there with you, helping you and making sure you're successful. Yeah. And they trusted me to do it.
Dude, that's fantastic. It was a CEO I used to have. He used to have a famous quote that was basically like, leadership is taken, not given. And that is like, that's true leadership, because again, it takes something that was a negative, or at least a deficit for you in the past, and translates that into a strength. Because I think someone who came from a background of mortgage, had everything handed to them, was older, professional, white collar, all that stuff, I don't think they could have motivated that group of people to do that, because you couldn't instantiate the belief in themselves that they would need to have to be any good at it. They're going to be terrified. But again, you're in your 20s, a woman, mother of 2, no background in mortgage, family didn't even own a home. No. And you're leading this gaggle of potential receptionists. And you're like, we can do this. I've done this myself. I can teach you how to do this and empower you. That's so cool. Not just because of what you were able to deliver to the company, but the lives you transformed of that group. Let's be honest, the earnings potential and career trajectory of a receptionist versus someone in the mortgage industry are very different. So that changed the reality for a lot of those women, probably for decades, their whole life forward, which is amazing.
Correct. And that's why, think of what I said when I introduced myself.
Yeah.
The mortgage industry has blessed me and my family more than I ever could have imagined in so many ways. At what you just said, the opportunity and the ability to earn and make a difference, and it's not just earnings, it's the impact.
Yeah.
What you just said, the impact that you can
totally
make. When you believe that, when you have that in your soul, you can't go wrong. You can't.
Yeah.
Now, it's not easy.
Yeah.
I'm never saying it's easy.
Yeah, no way.
Not easy. But the availability and the capability and the opportunity is limitless.
Yeah. And when you think of the downstream effects, you helped yourself obviously get a home eventually. You helped these women get homes in their future because they now are actually in a high enough paying job to do that. And they themselves helped everyone that they reached out to get their homes through mortgages. So like you have this giant pyramid of like, not just goodwill, but good effect going into the world because of your actions. And that is so cool. And you're just leaving this in your wake as you move forward, which is lovely.
That's correct.
Okay. So now you're running a call center of would-be receptionists, but now mortgage lenders. Where do you go from here?
So I became a COO, meaning I learned all the operational side, right?
Yeah.
Fast forward, crash 2007, right? Subprime mortgage crisis, okay?
Yep.
This now, again, I spoke about those pivotal moments in your life. This is the next pivotal moment. June of 2007, I figure the mortgage company I'm working for at that time, I figure they're going to go out of business. Shoot. So I have to now think ahead. Okay, it's so many companies went out of business back then. So
it's brutal.
I think to myself, where do I go? So I reach out to a friend of mine in the mortgage industry, and I ask her if she knows of any places that might not be in trouble. Yeah. She refers me to a company that is looking to open a mortgage wholesale division. I, at that point, say, I can do that job. I meet with the CEO of the company. The gentleman says to me, Laura, we're going to start off. Step 1, you run it. It's your baby. You're going to be the number one person. There's no salary. There's no benefits. It's just 100% commission. Here's the schedule. Now I have a mortgage. Now I have like 2 kids. And now big responsibility. I've been earning in the mortgage industry. And I make the decision to go back to square one, zero, start this company that I wound up taking to be the 4th largest FHA wholesale lender in the country, and became an owner, became the president. And I did that for the whole rest pretty much of my career, almost to this point. And then we sold that company in February of 2024.
What a courageous risk that was. What gave you, I mean, obviously you've had some previous experiences that have shown you some success, but like, what allowed you to take that risk? Especially with so much dependence on you, not just from literal dependence like kids, but just in general, all the responsibility you have now, financial and otherwise, on you.
When I left that interview, meeting the CEO, I can still remember all these years later, I got into my car. And of course, the first person I called was my husband. And I'm like, Tony, here's the offer. And my husband said, Laura, if you can have total control, you will take that company to the highest limit. You have to say yes.
Yeah.
And my husband gave me, and has always been my biggest cheerleader, to say,
That's great.
you can do anything. And I said, okay, we're doing this. And
oh
we
my
did.
God. That's huge. Again, that takes a certain belief in yourself and also a knowledge that at that point in your career, you didn't need as much mentorship. What you needed is an elimination of roadblocks. Like at a certain point in your career, you're like, at this point, the worst thing that can happen is I'm put in a position where I'm dependent on others to get what I need in order to be successful, rather than previously, early in your career, like I need other people to mentor me and teach me these things I don't know.
But you
So like that,
still remember, I was only in my early 30s. Like,
oh my God. Wow.
To put this into perspective.
Wow, I didn't realize.
I'm still a young woman.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So you were just like, you know what? Just internal confidence. I can figure this out. I just go.
I did. I literally see, I think when you start with nothing, with nothing, what's the worst that can happen? You start again?
Yeah, totally.
What's the worst
You're
that
right.
can happen?
That's a great point. Again, I think so many people start with anyone listening to this who has a background that is less than opportune. You know what I mean? And like hasn't had the opportunities of other people, the education, the couple rungs up head start that other people have had. Usually they think to themselves, man, how am I ever going to catch up to these people? And you've shown a way, or exceed them. And you've shown a way, which is that you have an advantage, actually, you haven't even considered. And your advantage is you know what it means to start from a lower level, from an uneven playing field and run uphill. And if they've been running on a flat playing field the whole time or downhill and you're running uphill, then man, as soon as it's a level playing field, you're going to dust them because you've been building this. Yeah.
Been at 0.0 numerous times. Why am I afraid of 0.0? I'm not afraid.
Totally. That's amazing.
I started 0.
That is great. I love that mentality. I think that's so important for people to kind of instantiate and for them to hold themselves to, like the ability to realize that sometimes your weaknesses like that really are your strengths. And the more you push through that, you're building up these muscles you didn't even know you had. And that other people who have like an easier life aren't building. You know what I mean? And that compounds over time. In the beginning, you're going to see them looking so far ahead. But then over time, and this isn't even that much time. I didn't even realize you're still in your early 30s. This is a 10-year time frame. That's crazy.
You realize I didn't have all that much knowledge.
No, this is 10 years. You've gone from not knowing a thing about the mortgage industry and just taking your first call center job, first probably real job, period, to all of a sudden running an entire mortgage operation during, and I have to mention this again, 2007, 2008, which is like the worst time. I mean, this is like, Lehman Brothers collapse, things crazy. I mean, this is like TARP. I mean, it was wild collapse for people who didn't live through this.
And that was my biggest growth time. You don't understand.
Really?
Like I can remember, I'm a year into the company, and I don't know if you know this name, but there was a company called Taylor, Bean and Whitaker. Okay. If you ever watch American Greed, there's a whole story about that.
Oh, really?
But anyway, okay. Yeah, it's a really interesting story. But anyway, this particular company did a lot of manufactured home lending, FHA manufactured home lending at that time. I can't remember if it was 2008 or 9, but somewhere in there.
Yeah.
The day they went out of business, I was one of the only wholesale lenders doing that product. Literally, no joke. I'm not making this up. They were backing up a truck to bring loans, piles, loans this high, truck coming and backing it up to my office because they went out of business and all those loans were coming to me.
Oh my God.
I remember going, oh my God. Literally,
wow.
The truck is backing up onto my office.
Dude,
so
that's crazy.
As one negative was happening, I was sitting there going, bring them over here. I'm happy to help those families.
Another great lesson. Again, you've got a company who was taking a lot of shortcuts and over-indexing on probably collateralized debt instruments and a bunch of other ninja loans, like no income, no job loans. And you, by being the only probably ethical wholesale mortgage lender in your area, you ended up actually winning that turtle in the hair kind of thing. You ended up actually winning that race. They spent ahead in the beginning. You stuck at it. They collapsed. And then all of a sudden, all those winnings went to you, which is fantastic. Right. That's fantastic. Yes. Okay, so now you've got to scale this thing. I mean, what are some lessons you learned from this period of time? You're right. You're still early 30s. You're running an entire operation during the middle of one of the biggest financial collapses we've had in the United States, especially in the mortgage space.
Oh, yeah.
How did you navigate that? What was your strategy? How did you run this thing? What are some other lessons we could
I mean, listen, the mistakes I made from being inexperienced,
yeah,
the whole company in the beginning kind of revolved around me. Right? Like literally, no joke. I mean, meaning that I was so entrenched in the day-to-day operation of what was going on. And mainly because part of it, I was learning on the fly. Like I was kind of like making it up as I was going along because I had never experienced something like this, right? And the growth was happening so fast. And so a lot of it was, well, if I stay in the nucleus, I can kind of take on the negative stuff and protect my team.
That's great.
Now, of course, looking back, though, that was a mistake. And as years passed, I realized I had to delegate. I had to entrust the leaders I put. And my God, fabulous leaders were developed. Such success came, you know, and I'm still, of course, these people are my family. Meaning, you know, we're so close, even now that we're not working together. But those early mistakes, I now teach other companies how not to make those mistakes, right? How not to be reactive, how to do better strategizing and planning, and how not to have things revolve around certain individuals, right? How to have your succession planning and how to make sure that you have streamlined process flows, right? So by the end of this 15-year run, my goodness, we all grew up so much and we all learned so much. But in the beginning, we were kind of running it by the seat of our pants, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I love it. Delegating's hard, especially if you find that like you can reliably count on yourself to do things. It becomes so hard to trust that others are going to do it because it's rare that you have a bunch of Laura's sliding paperwork under your door asking to be given more work or responsibility. Like typically as a leader, you're not that lucky. And you do have to look amongst the people that you're working with and be like, who can shoulder this and who can shoulder that and who can I delegate that to? And you've got two concerns in your mind. One, you obviously don't want things to slip. But two, also, you want to make sure you don't break their back, because, you're leading in what I consider to be the correct way, which is, the CEO of Kixie, my boss, he always tells me that basically stress should flow up, not down. And so you were doing that. You were basically shielding your team from a lot of the stress. You're taking it all on. But at a certain point, that doesn't scale. Like you do have to actually find some other people to take on these other operations. Because, there's only one of you,
Yeah. And luckily I was able to do that, right? And that all did work out. It just took me a little bit to get to that point to where I was the one that had to realize the problem was me. The problem wasn't others, right?
Yep.
And I really put that towards my inexperience, right? That I was almost trying to be more of a mama bear than being a president of a company, right? But I learned that in time and allowed them to take it.
That is a hard mentality to switch. I think you came from the position I like more. I think it's harder with people who come from I'm going to tell all these others what to do and trying to get them to be more mama bear. I'd rather work with people who are more mama bear. And it's like, okay, how do we get you to be a little less mama bear? And a little bit like, let's let some of this stress flow onto others so they can themselves grow and experience the kind of rapid changes, growth, the muscle we talked about building. Like they can build their own muscles too. And they're not atrophying because there's too much protection or whatever metaphor you want to run with. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So it seems like now you've actually taken a board seat that allows you to do this kind of at scale. So talk a little bit about that. There's a big lighthouse sign behind you. I don't think it's just for, aesthetics. Tell me about this.
Yes. So when I sold my company, right, it was kind of what do you do next, right? What do you do in that next phase of life? And now I can tell you that I thought to myself, how do I not just help one company? Meaning, if I go and I work at another company, then I'm just helping one company, right? How can I expand that? How can I work with lots of companies in the mortgage industry and take all these lessons and all this experience and all of everything I've learned over this great career and apply it in a beneficial way? And that's when myself and a good friend of mine, we partnered to develop Lighthouse Advisors, which allows us the ability to go in as a consultant and work with many, many different companies in the industry. So we have other mortgage companies that we work with, and they bring myself, and I have a whole team of consultants that specialize. So we have tech consultants and marketing consultants and financial consultants and everything in between. And
that's cool.
When they bring us in, we have, what's so fascinating is when I was running my company, I was in it and I couldn't see the full view. I couldn't see everything from an overview. Yep. Now I get to be in people's companies, but from a non-emotional standpoint. I have no opinion. All I know is fact. All I know is, like, I know the right way to get a loan from here to here. I know how to bring volume in. I know how to streamline. I know how to integrate technology. I know that, but I really don't have an opinion about Sue or Bill or Joe. I really don't have any opinion about those people.
Yeah.
So I can look at it from a very no connection, clear perspective to be able to give. And again, this is just my perspective. I then share that with the ownership team for them to make the decisions as far as what they would like to do with that.
But sometimes it's so important to have an unbiased opinion. I think anyone listening to this, how easy is it when you see a friend to give them wisdom and advice that, you know, if they were giving it, or they were giving it to you, or you were trying to give it to yourself, you wouldn't be able to give. Like it's much easier for us to see things other people are doing and be like, ooh, if you just fix that, you'd be killing it. But then we have a blind spot when it comes to ourselves, and it becomes so hard to do it just because we have a bias. We're obviously inherently interested in ourselves, and we're around ourselves all the time. It's hard to, like you said, step back and actually get that 30,000 foot view of how you're doing. Same way with the business. I mean, probably especially so with the business. You're building something up from the ground up. You've got these long-term relationships. You've been working with people for a long time. You've been doing things the same way for a long time.
Correct.
It can become really hard to reevaluate from first principles what you're doing. Is it working? Are there better ways to do it without a lot of entrenched knowledge workers resisting that change? Like if you go to your team and you're like, hey, I think this might work better. I haven't done it before, but let's all do everything different and learn a bunch of new stuff. That's going to be hard to convince them of, unless you have someone like you saying, dude, I met this woman. You've got to talk to her. She's done this before. She's found success. She's helped other people do it just like us. And we're going to follow her lead and we're going to switch. That's very different. Very different.
Yes. And one of the things that I do that's a little unique is any company that wants to work with me, I make them agree that I am part of the company. So I am part of their meetings. I am part of their Teams channel. I am part of their culture. I am part of their emails, their reporting, their P&Ls. I see it the same as if I own that company.
Oh, wow.
Number one, I want everyone to be comfortable with me. I want to understand their personalities. So I'm not just an outsider looking at like reports and saying, you should do this. Because that would not give me the full picture. Now, I will tell you, not everyone is okay with giving someone access to that. But the companies that work with me, they get that makes it more valuable. And so
definitely.
And I want to share that with you.
Yeah.
At this stage in my career, I choose who I work with.
Yep.
So that's a very important piece that people need to realize. That's what we're all striving for.
Yes.
Is that you decide the right fit, because when you have that kind of partnership, that kind of collaboration, you will always be successful.
Yeah. And that lets you take the one variable that you have no control over, which is your time, the most valuable resource you have, and allocate it towards the people, projects, businesses that are going to actually get the most out of it. Because there are people who are very resistant to change. And sure, you can take a paycheck from them, but then they're not going to see the success they want. Then they're going to blame you. Then the word's going to get out that you're not the most transformative person they've ever worked with. And then you're going to snowball that way, right? Like, as opposed to, I'm going to pick the people I get to work with so that each and every time it can be as much of a success as possible.
Right.
And the other great thing, I got to say, like, as someone who's dealt with advisors coming in, I think one of the most difficult things advisors or even outside managers you hire to come in and put on top of current staff can be buy-in from the staff. And that buy-in has to come from them really knowing the intricacies of the business. If they come in, all they've looked at is a P&L statement, and they're trying to make headcount decisions or move people around, like, they're like, this guy doesn't know anything about how we work. All he's read is some paperwork and an Excel sheet. and he thinks he knows which person will be the best in which slot. Like, so if you want buy-in from the team, you really need to be a part of the team and lead from the front, which it sounds like you brought, even though you're at a stage where you no longer need to do that, you could probably squeeze by without it. I like that you're still leading from the front and showing that, like, I want to be a part. I want to commit more of my time, my one valuable resource to you to make sure I get the buy-in and we can actually get some transformation.
That is exactly right. Because anyone I work with, I look at it as I'm an owner of that business. Doesn't mean I'm an owner of the business.
Yeah.
That's the way I think, though.
Yes.
That is the way I think. Every company, that is my company. And that company is going to succeed. And that company is going to excel on anything that they want to accomplish. I joke that I have the magic wand. Like literally it's, give me the wish because we're going to make it happen together. So I don't look at anyone as a project or a client. No, this is our company and we are going to make this happen.
Dude, I love that because that's like skin in the game. We're in this together. I'm not extracting value from you and then hoping you do well. It's like, I'm going to drag this across the finish line if it kills me kind of mentality, which is like, that's exactly what you want to hear from anyone working with your business, by the way. If you find people who are kind of disinterested, oh, I could give you some of my advice in my free time. I'll send you the bill later. No. You want someone who's like, all right, but if I'm in, I'm in. I need this. I want to be part of this. I want to be part of this because
And you have to be in. Meaning, in, you have to be in. Are you willing to put in the work to hit the goals that we're trying to accomplish? Because if I'm pulling uphill, but everybody else is just putting bricks in their bags, no, that's not going to work. You have to also take the bricks out of the bag while I'm pulling you up the hill. So this is a mutual decision that we are going up that hill. We're taking that mountain together. We're going up and we're reaching the top.
I love it. Because that's the other thing. When you get to a certain point in your career, when you have choice and selection, you can be selective. I think it is important to you almost switch the interview process on itself, where it's no longer you trying to pitch yourself, right? As like, I want you to hire me as a consultant or as an advisor. It's like, no. I want you to tell me why I should advise you. Why should I work with you? Right? You know what I mean? Isn't that cool? Like, and I think, but I think that's important to have. I think, and how did you switch your mindset around that? Because that's actually a big mind switch. People act like that's small. It's not. By the time you get to that point in your career when you can be demanding or can be choosy, you've gotten that far because you have taken on everything people have given you, and you've been like, put me in, coach, put me in, coach, put me in, coach. So how did you make that switch from put me in, coach to like, well, let me see the play first before I ask you to put me in? Like,
it was very early when I started Lighthouse Advisors, right? Very early on, I was able to get a client very quickly, right? And when that client, believe it or not, was a former client of my company. So he knew me. He was like, whoa, let's bring you on over
that's
here,
so cool.
right? So that was very quick. And I kind of got my thought of, well, listen, if I'm going to do this, I need access to this and blah, 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 right? And he was like, absolutely. It clicked. It was like perfect, right? And then I had someone else that wanted me to come on, and I told him the same thing, and I was chasing him. I was chasing. And something clicked in my brain, and I said, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not ever chasing anyone. Because until you have the decision that you want the success that I'm going to be able to bring you, you have to come together. I shouldn't chase you and you shouldn't chase me. We should equally come together with the decision of we are doing this.
Yes.
And I'm very thankful to that person that I was chasing because that person instantly told me what is unacceptable to me and what is a non-negotiable. So to your point, I don't have to go chasing anything. Almost, to be quite honest, this is funny. I was just working with someone that I test people. So what I do is if they say to me, Laura, I'm really interested in you joining and doing this, I will say, okay, this is what I'm thinking. I'll give you a rundown. And this is what I need from you. And I will tell you, if they do not respond by the deadline I give them, they're out.
No way. Yep. No way.
You're out.
No way. Yep. I love that. Again, you're giving them some demonstrative deliverable. And it's like, let me just see if you can actually, because you're not willing to do this little deliverable to start the adventure together, then man, at some critical juncture, you're going to be unwilling to deliver what we need to. And then we're both going to be screwed. You know what I mean?
That's right.
I love that.
You got it.
Dude, that's great. I want to be mindful of time. So I think the most important thing I want to get, if you are somebody in the mortgage industry and you are thinking about starting your own business, or you have a call center, or you're struggling with a call center, how do they get the privilege of interviewing for a position to have you be an advisor through Lighthouse Advisors? To be one of these select few. Yeah.
I mean, listen, honestly, reaching out to me at Laura@lighthouseadvisors.com, I'm always happy to make an acquaintance and have a conversation with anyone that is looking to maximize their, what they currently have, get on a growth plan, strategize. I mean, right now, we have a few people that are adding new divisions, right? Such as call center, such as wholesale, TPO, or direct to consumer. People are, even though the mortgage industry has been a little ups and downs in the last couple of years, people are at the point that they've kind of shed the excess that they had. And now they're really, really in strategy mode of, okay, we've gotten down to foundational. Now, how do we pick a lane and a growth strategy to be able to navigate these next few years, right?
Yeah.
So that definitely is it. And I'd love to hear from you. I mean, obviously we met, Kixie and Lighthouse came together because Kixie is going to be going on the platform Moraline, which is something that I'm a board advisor on. And, I'm so happy that we're formed this partnership and that you guys are going to be, well, you're on the platform now, but we haven't done the marketing part of it. Please tell me, how does Kixie make that difference in the call center model and in the mortgage industry?
Oh, you throw the interview back on me. This is classic Laura. I love it. So Kixie, we're calling and texting automation platform that integrates with your CRM. That sounds super confusing. So I'll break it down. So if you're somebody who's in a call center, or you're someone who's starting your own business and you're making calls and you're sending texts and you're trying to grow your revenue and you want a piece of software to help take you to the next level, so that instead of dialing with one line at a time, you're dialing with a 10 and only connecting with the people who actually pick up the phone and not spending half your time on voicemail, Kixie's your solution. If you are somebody who doesn't want to spend half your time making calls and the other half typing in notes into your CRM because the calls automatically log to the CRM, the recordings automatically log, the text automatically log, Kixie is a great solution for you. Likewise, if you're calling and you don't want 30% to 40% of your calls to never be answered because your number is always showing up as spam, Kixie is your solution. Kixie have an AI-powered spam detection algorithm that will leverage a whole 50,000 number bank to choose numbers that are predicted to be the least likely to show up as spam when you make calls, and it also show up as local area code numbers, and it also rotate each and every time you call. So basically what we do is we just provide a powerful tool so that people like Laura and all the people that she works with can have call centers that are, 10 times as efficacious as they would otherwise be, and just generally work smarter rather than harder. And that's kind of where we fit in. I do want to hear more about Moraline too. Talk a little bit about that, because I'm really excited to work with you on this.
So Moraline was born out of a conversation that I had with a young woman. A lot of young women come to me for mentorship.
Yeah.
And this young woman I met at an MBA conference, and she came to me and was telling me that she created a technology that she spent all of this money trying to get this technology out to the mortgage industry. And she essentially hit the brick wall. She ran out of money. She couldn't get anywhere. And in that moment, all of a sudden I had a thought. And I thought to myself, it's really got to be hard to break into the mortgage industry unless you have people that are influential or have a wide network or you have deep pockets to be able to, pay to sponsor things all the time.
Sure, great. Yeah.
So in that moment, the two of us were having this conversation, and she said, Laura, why don't we build something like that? And so she went and she created a platform called Moraline, and she asked me to kind of be a board advisor to help guide her through this. And Moraline.ai is about to go live in March of 2025. And Kixie's already one of the beta people that are on there. And essentially, this is a platform where mortgage professionals can come to see new technology, see programs, products, services, and a community to where maybe there's companies out there that maybe they can't be on stage at the NBA or some of these big conferences because maybe
Right.
they're newer, maybe they just don't have that type of budget. But yet, they're great companies. And just like what you just described, you provide such a wonderful service that maybe it just hasn't trickled to the right places yet.
Yep.
So for everybody listening, go to Moreline, check out Kixie, read what they're all about, schedule a demo, get a consultation, because this is where we can all come together and win all together. That abundant mindset, right? This isn't if one person wins, another person loses. Absolutely not. There's so much value. And it's time for all of us to continue to band together and lift higher.
Nora, I'm going to end it on that. That was beautiful. It was great talking to you today.